I hit record. Yeah. So
Okay.
I'm just going to share this with everybody. Me and Shannon were just talking for a little while, and we had a great conversation. So I just had to hit record and jump right into this. First, I'm going to start off with, first we got connected through Jacqueline, which is another podcaster. So it's very appreciative that her and others are sharing other guests with me, and we're able to connect. And so, Shannon, before we might jump back into what we were discussing earlier, why don't you share with everybody who you are, what you're doing, and we can go back to the experiences you had in your life to get you to where you are today.
Perfect. Yes. So my name is Shannan Mondor, and I live in Alberta, Canada. I am a mindset and manifesting coach, and I also love to help people to transform their lives. So I'm also a transformational mentor as well. I am a best-selling author. I have my own podcast as well, which is called Fulfillment in Faith. My book that I wrote is called How in the Hell Did I Get Here? Forever Changing the Genetic Blueprint. And my company is called Fulfillment in Faith. And that's where you can go onto my website and you can see all the programs that I offer to help people to basically transform their lives. Let me see what else. There's just so much about me. Oh, I'm a TED Talk speaker, and yeah, so I am a motivational speaker as well. I've got a lot in my back pocket. So, and life is great. Mm-hmm.
Of course it is, right?
Yeah,
Well,
it's
I've been
amazing.
often and connecting. Yeah. And we were just talking about your TEDx talk and the experience you had and everything, which was really great. And I know you said that comes out, let's just say it was what, March or April, you were saying that it would probably.
Yeah. Yeah. I did it January. I went on stage on January 27th in Las Vegas. And then however long it could take 8 weeks. It could take up to 12 weeks. So I'm expecting March, beginning of April, somewhere in there, but it'll be all over my social media as well too,
Awesome.
when it does get released as well.
Awesome. So let's dive into who Shannon is, right? So how'd you get to where you're helping other people manifesting and transforming their lives? I mean, obviously you had to have gone through some kind of transformation yourself. So
Yeah.
what was that?
So with me, I am the youngest of 9 children. So there's 8 of us siblings, and then I have a half brother. So where my journey started was my father was an alcoholic, and he was extremely abusive and had mental illness. And he ended up committing suicide when I was 2.5 years old. Even before I was born, he badly abused my brothers and sisters and my mother as well. And then when he committed suicide, basically what had happened was my oldest brother had taken over his role. So he was there to help my mother raise the rest of us children. And so I grew up in an environment where it was extremely violent. There was a lot of arguing, there was a lot of fighting, so I grew up myself with the feelings of anxiety and fear. My brother was there all the time. And when it came to the physical abuse, it was more the mental as well that really, really damaged me and the rest of my siblings as well, because I grew up being told my entire life from him that I was dumb, I was stupid, I was never going to amount to anything. And then, as I got older into my teenage years, the words just got even worse. Every time I would walk by him, I was always in fear because I knew I was always going to get punched or hit or thrown on the floor. I never had, and I'm 54 years old now. So back in the day, we didn't have a lot of toys and we were poor. And so what Barbies or dolls I did have, of course, I cherished, right? But he was such a sick individual that he would take a pen and he would write genitals all over my Barbies, which was one or two, and then my one or two dolls that I had. He would rip off the head and he would rip off all of the limbs. And then he would just think it's funny and I would be left with nothing. even ice cream cones, or, as a child, you can remember back in the day, eating an ice cream cone or whatever. And I, if I knew him coming, I knew exactly what was going to happen. He would smush it all over my face. Like he just did the most horrible and insane things. And then he would laugh. He would think it was funny. And so growing up, in that environment, I had no self-esteem. I was told all those bad things all the time. So I believed them. I felt ugly. I really devalued myself. And then as I grew up into my teenage years, what did I do? I conformed my personality around that. And that's what we do, right? No matter what environment you're brought up in. So that was when I really started to become a people pleaser, and I wanted people to like me. And my outlet back then was sports. And then once I got into grade 11 and grade 12, I had major chronic depression, like really bad depression. Of course, back in the 80s, nobody really talked about it. We didn't even really know what it was. But my signs were, well, of course, I was suicidal my grade 12 year, very much so. And I could not stay awake no matter what. I wanted to be alone all the time. I was really starting to withdraw. And then another thing too was I drank on weekends, huge, binge drank all the time. And then I ended up not graduating, which only instilled that even more, that I was dumb, I was stupid, I was never going to amount to anything. So that absolutely just crushed me. So now I'm in my 20s and 30s. What am I attracting? Because you are who you attract, right? I'm attracting individuals into my life that are manipulating me, that are walking all over me, that are narcissists, right? Because once again, I put everybody else first because I want to be liked. And that was basically what it was like for my 20s and my 30s. And then, I could go into like hours of my story, right? But basically what had happened was I met my husband. Opposites attract. With my family, of course, we're all uneducated, struggling for money, low self-esteem. And I'm talking about everybody in my family. Everybody in my family has an addiction, whether it be a drug addiction, food addiction. One of my individuals went through gambling addiction. There's addiction all throughout our whole entire family, food as well. And then, we had a bad reputation. Our family name had a very, very bad reputation because I grew up in a small town of under 1,000 people. So everybody knew what my dad was like, even before I was born. So when I came into the world, I was judged even when I was just a little child. And I can remember feeling being judged. So as I grew up too, I disliked my last name so much because my brothers also made a really bad reputation of our names. Because of course, what had happened with them was they lacked self-esteem and everything as well, the same feelings that I did. So how did they prove themselves? By fighting. That's how they proved themselves. So of course, our last name, I was attached to that last name, and people would say to me, oh, are you such and such's brother or sister? Or are you such and such's daughter? And I'd be like, yeah. And I hated having to admit that because I knew automatically where it was going to go. It was going to go to judgment. So when I got into my 20s, when I was done high school, like I said, I didn't graduate. I ran. I was running from my last name. I was running from my past. I was running from everything. And what had happened through the course of me in my 20s and 30s, you always become the person that you don't want to be and that you're running from. And that's exactly what happened. I disliked my brother so bad, and I did not want to be like him so bad, I actually turned into him. Because what you focus your mind the most on, you become. It just is, whether it's good or whether it's bad. And of course, I lived my life not wanting to be like him. I was running, and you know what I mean? I ended up becoming addicted to alcohol. I ended up having a mental illness. I became suicidal. He went into an institution, and his institution was in and out of jail. My institution was I went into treatment. I did not become physically, but I was to the point of becoming physically abusive to the people that I loved, but I definitely was mentally abusive to them. And then, of course, I disliked my mother because I never felt that she ever protected me. And it wasn't until, so I had went in treatment and then I quit drinking. And then, I fell back into the whole aspect of starting to drink again and just living my life, what it was before. And then it was finally on August 17th of 2019 was when I woke up and I was like, no, I can't do this anymore. That was my awareness to awakening. That was huge for me because that was when I really sat back and I'm like, what in the hell am I doing? And that's why I called my book, How in the Hell Did I Get Here? Because that's literally what it was like that morning. When I woke up, I'm like, how in the hell did I get here? Oh my God. And we've all gone through that. Every single one of us at one point and a time in our life, we have all asked that questions to ourselves. And that was my moment. And I was like, wow. But that was also the moment that I realized that all of those things that my brother had said to me were not true. They were not true. And that took a lot for me to really see that for the first time, because I had believed that at that time I was 50. I'm turning 55 in March. And for me to have that instilled in me all those years, that was a hard thing. And, there are still days where I still struggle with that. The self-doubt, the shame, all of it, right? Because there's triggers. Those are things that, those are wounds which are now scars. And that's why I'm able to openly talk about everything now, because I've learned to deal with them. And when that happened, I was like, oh my God, that's my brother. All those bad, nasty, ugly things that he said to me growing up, and still to the point until I actually had to cut him off completely out of my life. He believed that about himself. But where did he get that from? He got that from my father, because my father instilled that into him. And where did my father get that from? Right? So those behaviors and beliefs are all generational, exactly like the addiction. And then I could start to see all of this. It was like I had this aha moment, like, oh my God. And at that point in time too, I also realized that we were in the 4th generation of addiction, because it started with my father. I didn't know his parents. So I knew my grandmother, but she wasn't a drinker. But I did not know my dad's dad. So he could have been an alcoholic as well. I do not know. But all I knew was we were in the 4th generation, because it was my dad, and then it was all of my brothers and sisters and me. Then it went into all of my nieces and nephews, because my nieces and nephews have an addiction of some sort. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And of course they do, because they were brought up in that environment, which was normalized. So they wouldn't know any different, just like I didn't know anything different. And now it's gone into my great nephews. I don't have any great nieces yet, but I've got great nephews. And I'm looking at my children, because I've got 4 children. At that time, they were ranging in the age of kindergarten to grade 11. I've got 4 children. And I was like, oh my God, I am normalizing the environment that I was brought up in for my children. And I was like, oh God, no way. This is not going to happen. I'm not going to have my children have an addiction, because that's exactly what was going to happen. And then it would go to my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and generations to continue on. And that was a huge eye-opening for me. And it was like, no, you know what? I'm going to be an amazing mother. I'm going to be a mentor, and I'm going to do something about this, because the only person that can stop that is me. And then my journey continued, right?
Yeah. That was a lot to fill in there. And I know, I'm sure you can branch out in certain areas.
We can. I absolutely can. Like I said, yeah, for sure.
But so just to clarify, what was the age gap with you and your brother? How old was he compared to you then?
My brother is 17 years older than me.
Okay. So yeah, like a grown man when he was really watching you. Yeah.
He was a grown man when all of this was taking place. He was in his 20s. He was in his early 20s. And then of course continued on until then. right? But the thing with him as well is he abused, like he was married 3 times. He abused his wives as well, right? He did exactly to his wives and his children what my father did to his wife and his children.
Yeah, he didn't know another way.
He didn't know another life at all. At all.
So you had this, transformation. You woke up and, you had to change things. So how would somebody else might have to go through something like that to start finding other ways of being different in a way? Like there's a whole different life out there if you wanted to explore it.
There is, yeah, absolutely there is. But the biggest thing with me is I had contrast. So you have to see the good or you have to see the bad of the situation that you're in to know that there is a difference. So you have to know what you like and what you don't like, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew how I was living. I was not liking it at all. And it was so funny because, opposites attract, especially when it came to the marriage of me and my husband. Because like I said, I came from a family, that was addiction, abuse, lack of education, struggling financially, right? And then there's my husband's side of the family. They're pillars of the community. Everybody knows them. Everybody likes them. They got a great reputation. They're all financially secure, all of that. So I was exposed. So that was my contrast. But at the same time, as I'm going through that process, it's me. I am like, I'm not worthy of this. Right? Because it's a lot easier for me because now I'm not in my comfort zone. My comfort zone is addiction. Is my family chaotic lifestyle. That's where I had grown up. So that's my comfortable spot. And it's crazy to think, but anybody that's gone through it, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Because now I'm in a family which is absolutely amazing, but I don't feel that I'm worthy. So what do I do there too is I put everybody else ahead of me. Right? But I'm not realizing that I'm doing that. But as I'm putting everybody else ahead of me, I am digging myself deeper, deeper, deeper into a depression is what had taken place with me. So that's where my suicidal thoughts and everything started to come in. That's where my drinking and everything really, really started to get to a halt. And that's the thing, like I'm 120 pounds. I was drinking 6 bottles of wine a day, if you can believe it or not. Right?
That's hot.
Yeah, like it's crazy. It's absolutely, it's beyond absurd, right? And so my biggest thing was I always knew back in my 20s there was something wrong. I didn't really know back then. So what I had done back then was I love personal development. And it wasn't that I just went out and looked for it. I started paying attention to my thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And it was like, why am I feeling like this? And I did start going to counselors back then too, because I couldn't understand why I'm so sad all the time or what was taking place, right? Because I knew that I needed counseling of some sort. But there was also tragedies that had happened throughout, in my younger years as well. Like I had lost a baby. So that was really a part of what was bringing me to go see counselors and that. And then other things would come out, about me talking about, my past with my brother and all of this, right? And then it was like, so that was the beginning of my journey, I'll be honest with you, when it came to that. But then, of course, therapists can only, with me anyways, they could only go to a certain level because they didn't experience what I had gone through. So they're trying to give me advice and tell me what I should be doing. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, how can you give me this advice when you've never experienced it yourself? It's kind of like taking gymnastics by a mechanic when you really should be taking it by somebody that is actually a gymnastic coach.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with that. A lot of people, they just go to school, study psychology and stuff, and and that's what they get involved with.
Yeah, and my counselors, I'll be honest with you, they were amazing up until a certain point, but then they got to that certain point and they weren't helping me anymore. And all they kept on doing was talking about the past, the past, the past. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't talk about my past anymore. What I need here is some tools that are going to take me forward, because you guys aren't giving me anything anymore. And you know what I mean? So what I ended up doing is I actually started to seek out life coaches that had similar backgrounds from me. And what a world of difference that was. And then I started reading books by Deepak Chopra, Louise Hay, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, like all of these. And all of them have had pasts like me. And I could totally relate to them. And they spoke openly about their upbringings and their tragedy. And they had all these different tools. And that's basically how I started to get on my journey. Then I started taking different courses. Then I actually started to take I did take my life coaching certification. Then I became a certified yoga instructor. I've got all these different energy modalities as well. Like I've got my Reiki, I do the Yuan method. And then from there, just things really started to take off for me. But the biggest thing is once I started to open myself up to all these different avenues, I started to connect with people that were very much like-minded, and you can connect with exactly what I'm saying. They started to come forward. I could speak openly about my past and not feel shame or anything anymore. And then it was such a relief, because how you get rid of your past is by being open and honest and freeing yourself. And that's what I did. And then I ended up writing a book. How in the hell did I get here? Forever Changing the Genetic Blueprint. And I was completely open about everything in that book. But the funny thing was when I wrote that book, I actually didn't even consider me writing that book like for me to heal at all. It never even crossed my mind. That's the funny thing about it. I didn't realize that till about, 6 or 8 months after it was published. My main focus was if there is just one person that I can save that's gone through the exact same thing that I have done, then my work is done.
And that's what it's all about. Yeah. Just that one person. Although you got it in, hundreds, thousands of people's hands or whatever, right?
Yes.
Like as long as that one person can connect with it, just like you connect with all the books that you said you mentioned.
Absolutely.
That's well worth it. Yeah. So
yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. And then of course from there, I created a whole different life that I wanted. But at the same time too, I also had to set my healthy boundaries. The biggest thing that I had to do was I had to sit with myself. And that was one of the things that I learned is, what does Shannan Mondor want to be in her end result? And you know what I want, and I am now, and I never would have thought that I would have been, is a motivational speaker. Me being on stage, sharing my story with the world. And that's exactly what I do now. And now whenever anything comes up to me, it's like, okay, would that end result, Shannan, accept this? Of course she wouldn't. So, okay, healthy boundary set. Would that Shannan Mondor end result have these types of people disrespect her like this? Absolutely not. Another healthy boundary set. So I had to literally change my whole entire life. And I mean 100%. Like there is less than a handful of people in my life that I even communicated with 2 years ago. So if you knew me 5 years ago, you don't know that Shannan Mondor that I am now.
Right. And we were just talking about this.
We were talking about that.
Yeah. And, and for me, I wouldn't even know I was doing this after 3 years from back.
No.
I think it's changed completely. And like you mentioned prior to us hitting record, and it's nothing against the people around you, right? You're just going.
It has nothing to do with the people around you. It's all the individual that is growing. I've grown so much since then that I don't have a common barrier with these individuals anymore. I've been where they've been, and I have elevated from there. I'm creating the life that I want, that I dream of. And the only way that we would be able to elevate, if they would be in my life right now, is if they elevated with me, and if they had the same dreams, goals, aspirations, then we would be on the same journey, but we don't. They're on a different journey than I am. And I'm not, and that's just how it is, right? Not looking at them in judgment. And I hope they're not looking at me in judgment, but I do know that I'm being looked at judgment, because a lot of people don't like the fact that people change.
They don't.
No.
Yeah, they don't want you to become better than them, I guess, in a sense, right?
Right. And it's not, I don't know if it's really a sense of being better. It can also be the sense of they can't control you anymore, or they can't conform you to what they want their environment to be, because when you change, that disrupts their environment. And a lot of people don't like change. If they're not ready to grow, they like everything. They like to stay in their little bubble. And I'm not a little bubble person. I'm like a big world girl,
Right. Just don't get this close. So what would you say to somebody that, is probably, on that path of trying to separate themselves in a way, if you're trying to help somebody manifest and transform their life, right? There's got to be a disconnect and then a connection somewhere on the other side where they're going to go in that gap. What would you say to them?
The biggest thing is, how bad do you want it? Because I know that whatever I wanted it bad. So I was willing to go forward. And if that meant that I had to leave people behind, which I have left behind, that's okay. Because that is going to happen. If you really want whatever it is, these people are not going to go with you. They're not going to understand you. They're not going to be able to comprehend. If anything, they're going to hold you back. And there's nothing holding me back. So really, it depends on how bad do you want it. And that doesn't mean when you leave those people behind that you have to be rude, there has to be anger or anything like that. Because we all have individuals in our life for learning lessons. And that's the biggest thing too. There's a learning lesson in absolutely everything that you do and every person that you meet. I look at individuals now, whenever they come to me, there's two reasons. Number one, they're looking to learn something from me. And I am in such awareness of that now, right? Okay, so what is it? Okay, so this person is coming to me in my life. What is it? Okay, what am I learning from this person? I really pay attention. I'm aware. Or what is it? Are they learning from me? Because I can tell right off the bat what it is between our interactions. And I know too that, they could be in my life for 6 months. They could be in my life for a year. They could be in my life for a week. And that's okay. But that's also because I know myself so well inside. I've got that confidence to release people, right? And with that confidence and the strength and all of that within me, I know who I am and I know where I'm going. I know what I'm doing because I can already see my end result. I'm taking the action steps to go towards that.
So how do you see your end result? Like, do you write it out? Do you have a vision board kind of deal, or it's just in your head?
Well, what I used to do, I used to say, see, that this is the great thing, because I've got my programs, which are all available on my website. So Awakening to Awareness. My Awakening to Awareness program, that's where I teach you the actual step-by-step that I did. First of all is coming to the awareness. You have to also see to what you don't like from your past that you want to change. Then you see the contrast. So what is it that you do want? Once you see what you do want, then you have to start creating affirmations, because a lot of times these belief systems that we have inside of us are not ours. That belief system that I carried within myself for 50 years was not mine. It was my brother's. So with these belief systems, we talk about your belief systems within inside you as well. What are these belief systems that are going to stop you from going forward? Number one is there's always fear. Fear is always going to creep up. But with me now, I embrace my fear because I've gone through that. There's always going to be fear no matter what. But you have to really see, is this fear actually going to stop me from getting to where I want to go? And if it is, then you know what? That's where you really got to tackle it. There's not too many things that scare me anymore, that stop me, because I actually embrace it. I'm like, oh my God, if fear's coming, like, I'll tell you, before I even went on that TED Talk stage, there was fear creeping up me days before. Oh my God, you're going to go out there and you're going to do a bad job, or you're going to do, you know what I mean? And it's my ego talking to me. And I'm like, my awareness is kicking in and I'm like, no damn way. No way. I have had this vision for how long? There is nothing that's going to stop me now. When fear creeps in lots of individuals out there, that's where they like, no, I can't do it. They can't do it. But that's where you really have to push through and you have to talk to yourself. And it's like, no, this is what I want. And there's going to be growing pains, absolutely. But in order for you to have a breakthrough, you have to have a breakdown. You have to become vulnerable. That's huge. Vulnerable to me is my superpower. Because when I show my emotions or whatever, it's just like, oh my God, like I am elevating even more. What have I learned from this particular thing? You know, that's touched me so deeply. And now what am I able to teach others from this vulnerability that I'm sharing? And it also gives other people strength to show their vulnerability. Because people look at me and they're like, holy shit, for all that she's gone through and look at her go now. I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that. How am I going to do that? And that's why I created Awakening to Awareness. And then that's the beginning stages, because you do mirror work. There's so many amazing tools that I've done personally that I teach others. Then there's also my Rise Above program. And that's where I actually teach you about your timeline. Because it doesn't matter what you want to manifest out there, there's always going to be barriers. And the biggest barrier is always going to be you don't feel that you're good enough. Okay, well, who told you you're not going to be good enough? I know exactly who told me I wasn't going to be good enough, which was my abuser, my brother, right? But a lot of people don't comprehend that. So what I do is I actually take you back to your timelines of everything that's actually stopping you from doing it. And then we work through those. And then we create a new identity. Like what I've done, I had to create a new identity. And so there's a whole bunch. And then there's a whole bunch of different lessons in that one too. And then there's a dominant feeling. We all wake up with a specific dominant feeling every day. And it's to be awareness is my dominant feeling, a feeling of happy joy, right? Because when you're in those dominant feelings, that's where you're on a higher vibration. And I get more to the law of attraction and law of vibration and all of that. And then I've got my final program, which is a 6 months transformational program. And that's where we go deep with everything. And that's where you totally transform your whole life completely. And of course, I created these programs because I've gone through all of them, right? I live them on a daily basis.
Right. Yeah. And in hopes that you catch somebody before they're older, down the line, right? So hopefully you can get somebody when they're in their 20s or 30s, right? And then,
but you know what? I'll be honest with you. Like it was like, hopefully you do. But you know what? Life is such a gift. And like we had talked earlier, you don't find your life purpose. Well, I don't believe, this is me talking now, not anybody. I don't believe that you find your trauma is, your life purpose is buried in your trauma. And I really feel that it's not until about, I hate to say it, your 40s is when things really start to kick in. You know what I mean? I never really understood that saying midlife crisis.
if you were to ask me, I would have to agree with you, but everybody's different, right? So maybe
everybody is different. But yeah,
I would agree that for whatever reason, everybody I'm connecting with is probably late 30s, early 40s, or in their 40s.
Yeah.
And it's that transformation stage in there because they're tired of the same shit that they were dealing with in the past, and they're just ready to move on and know that they can be so much better than who they are, and find that right path.
So it is funny because their awakening to awareness is like, how the hell did I get here? Like, what the?
Why did I listen to all this?
Happening over and over and over and over. And that was the one thing I got to tell you, when I wrote my book and I read it for the last time, and I'm like, oh my God, you can see because our lives are stories. You can see where I repeated things over and over and over. And it was because I wasn't getting the lesson. because I was attracting the same people over and over. They would be in my life for a bit, but I would attract that same type of person in, right? Until I could actually get my lesson and let them go. And once I could let them go, then I could move on to the next stage in my life. That's what happens when you're 30s and 40s. And that's your holy shit moment, like I'm done.
That's right. Yeah. You have to use that one in your program, the holy shit moment. But
holy shit. Yeah, that'll be my next book. No, I'm kidding.
That's right. I know you shared a lot of your programs, and you definitely shared a lot of your journey, and we could probably dive in deeper some other time if you came back on. What's the best way for somebody to connect with you, to check out everything you have going on?
Of course, Facebook and Instagram, Shannan Mondor. You can go onto my website, which is shannanmondor.com. And my name is 2 A's, Shannan. And then my last name, Mondor, there's 2 O's. So yeah, and you can, literally everything is there. You can go onto Amazon, and that's where my book is, How in the Hell Did I Get Here? Forever Changing the Genetic Blueprint. Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. If you want to message me, get a hold of me, everything is right there. My website is info@shannanmondor.com. Yeah.
Awesome.
Pretty, yeah.
Awesome. I just got one question for you. What are 3 key things you've learned and used along your journey?
Oh my gosh. There's been so many, and I got to narrow them down. Okay. Number 1, you have to be willing to get vulnerable. Number 2, you have to have belief and faith within yourself. I have so much faith within myself that I actually got a tattoo. And that's why I called my business Fulfillment in Faith. And I was always against tattoos. And I ended up getting a tattoo about 6 months ago, Fulfillment in Faith, because once you have faith in yourself, you will have fulfillment in absolutely every area of your life. And I know that. I know that wholeheartedly now because of where I've been, what I've created, where I'm going. Number 3, the answer is always within. And that is one thing I've learned, is to trust myself. If anything happens within my life, I sit in my silence now, because I know now that is the connection between me and the universe will always guide me. And my answer, I can feel it. I can feel it throughout my body. I have no doubt anymore because of that, because I've learned who I am. I truly know who I am.
Awesome.
So my 3, yeah.
Yeah, and they're all great. And a lot of it we were just discussing. So I mean, you kind of narrowed it down, and it came right down to those last 3. Shannan, it's great to have you on here, and I hope we can connect again sometime in the near future, and whether it's through this or some other way. But thank you.
This was absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much. But make sure to follow me on Facebook, listeners, and Instagram, because my TED Talk is going to be out, and go to my website. And I invite you all to go to my website. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I look forward to that TED Talk then.
Yeah.
Check it out.